In this video, we're going to be talking about something called planned obsolescence. And what that word obsolescence means is essentially something like a product that is irrelevant and not used anymore. So for example, typewriters are obsolete because we have the invention of computers and keyboards now, so we don't need typewriters anymore. So when we say planned obsolescence, that's when the companies intentionally plan for their products to become obsolete, usually with the purpose to force people to buy their new products. Okay, so again, what is planned obsolescence? Here is a specific definition: the overly frequent introduction of replacement products to motivate the replacement of functioning products. So we're not talking about products that replace old technology, right? We're talking about replacement products that are meant to replace still functioning products, right? So smartphones are a great example of this, right? iPhone 5s and 6s probably work just, like they're slower, of course, but they still function. So having a new type of iPhone come out every 6 months or a year or whatever it is, that helps forward this idea of planned obsolescence. Maybe you would need to replace your phone normally every 3 years or something like that, because that phone after 3 years stops to function properly. But at the same time, computers can last for a long time. So why are our phones traditionally only lasting 2 or 3 years? It doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? You'd think that they would last a little bit longer. So that's what planned obsolescence is. But there's a few different ways to go about it. There's a few different ways that we're seeing companies do and act out this planned obsolescence. Okay? It kind of comes in two main categories. We have what's called product obsolescence, which is they're designing the product's durability so that it is less durable, so that it'll break easier, it'll slow down easier, it'll stop performing as good prematurely. And then you have what we call technological obsolescence, and this is the design of the product's technical features. And we'll talk about that in a second here. But we'll start with product obsolescence. So for example, we could have a limited life design, which is, like I said, designing products to wear out prematurely, or you might hear it called death dating. So this is where, for example, Apple will purposely make their phones slow down after a year or two so that you would want to replace that. Actually, another great example of this is the light bulb. I forgot what the company names were, what it was, but essentially they could make light bulbs that lasted for, I think it was on average 2,000 hours. You could have this light bulb on for 2,000 hours before the filament inside would burn out. But the companies were like, well, why would we do that when we could purposely make the filament burn out at 1,000 hours, so they have to buy double the amount of light bulbs? And that was their thinking, and that's what they did. And then they tried to market it as, wow, you get 1,000 hours of power, of light, even though really they had the capability of lasting for 2,000 hours. So limited life design. And then similarly, there's limited repair design, where they make the cost to repair a product equal to or higher or around the same price as replacing it. So for example, let's just say I have a camera lens for my DSLR camera. Maybe it's a $800 lens. And then I get like a small scratch on the front of it. And then I send it into, I don't know, I'm just making this up. I just send it into Nikon and they say, you know what? It's going to cost $700 to replace it or to fix this lens. Well, then I'm going to be like, okay, well, why am I going to pay $700 to repair it when I could just replace it for pretty much the same amount of money, right? So that's another way that you can create product obsolescence and encourage people to just replace and buy the newest product instead of keeping one that could still be functional. Then we get to technological obsolescence. And for example, this could be when products that are meant to look pristine easily tarnish, right? If you have, like, for example, my motorcycle has a lot of chrome on it. And if there's a blemish on that chrome, you can easily spot it, right? Of course, chrome is easy to clean. But if you could imagine something like that, I think early iPhones, iPhone 4 or 4S around there, the cases were made of glass. Like the actual phone was made out of glass on the back. So if you dropped it, even just from a low height, it would crack almost instantly. I remember when I was in high school and everyone had that era of phone, everybody's was cracked and everybody was always replacing it. Their screens were super breakable as well. So that's also part of this. Look, they're supposed to look pristine, but they break easy or they tarnish easily. Okay? So we call that design aesthetics. And then we have something that we call design for fashion. It doesn't always have to apply to the fashion industry, but it's essentially products with a certain look that are currently in. And then what these companies will try to do, fashion companies or technology companies or whatever it is try to change what's in so that people will start coming back and continuing to buy more and more products that are in and not the old products anymore. Okay, the last one I want to talk about with this technological obsolescence is what they call design for functional enhancement. Essentially, this is when a company is updating or upgrading or enhancing future products instead of current ones. And honestly, a lot of technology companies do this. I think places like Google and Microsoft, they're always focusing on the next and the newest project instead of focusing on making the current ones better. I remember reading something about someone who worked at Google, and his team was tasked with coming up with like the new version of Gmail instead of fixing the issues with the current one. There were issues with the current one, but we're just like, you know what? We're just going to make a new Gmail. And that kind of thinking is what leads to product obsolescence as well, right? Why are we going to worry about the issues with the iPhone X when we're coming out with the XS next? And the same thing with right now. If there's issues with the XS, it's like, oh, no worries, we'll iron it out for the next version of the iPhone. Okay, so we talked about what it is, the different types of product obsolescence, planned obsolescence, I should say. But what are the issues? What's the problem with that? Okay, well, there's environmental issues. I read that there's yearly around 100 million phones and 300 million personal computers discarded per year. And that leads or equals around 50 million tons of electronic waste. And even if you're recycling all those, only about 20% get recycled. Okay? And then, of course, the resource extraction needed to replace all of those phones and all of those personal computers and all these other electronics per year, right? There's a huge impact on the environment. But there's also a social impact as well, a negative social impact. I watched a documentary about electronics recycling, and the conditions that the workers have to go through are horrendous. They are absolutely dangerous and horrible. So these dangerous recycling processes affect workers, it affects people, it affects livelihoods. But if you're talking more, again, we're talking ethics here, from an ethical standpoint, it takes autonomy away from consumers. And again, that word autonomy is kind of like personal freedom, right? It takes personal freedom and choice away from us if, for example, iPhone just says, you know what, we're not going to hand out software updates anymore to iPhone 6s because they're too old. Even though they function great, they're just making that decision not to force us to replace those phones. Takes that autonomy away from us, right? Kantianism would hate that, right? From what we learned about in past videos, Kantianism would hate that. So I'm going to leave you with some questions here. Why do businesses practice planned obsolescence? Why do they do that? Well, I already kind of gave you an answer with the light bulb, right? More sales, more profits, right? But there's actual more like business strategy reasons as well. rapid product development is needed in today's age to remain competitive. If Apple's like, oh yeah, you know what, we're just going to come out with one phone every 3 years, but then Samsung is saying, you know what, like they keep doing one phone every half a year or year or whatever they do, Samsung is going to become going to make a lot more sales and maybe be a lot more profitable than Apple would. Even though Apple is more ethical, they're not going to be as competitive. So there is a business reason for it. And again, the longer that repeat purchase cycle, the slower the sales become. So instead, if you're stretching out from people buying a phone every year to every 3 years at Apple, they're really slowing down their sales. And of course, if you make a more durable product that doesn't break easily, and the stronger the used good market becomes, right? There's some cars out there that really retain their value. You could drive it to like 200,000 kilometers and they'll still be worth a lot of money because they are just very durable, right? So if you can have a car that will drive 400,000 kilometers, you're not going to be buying a car every 5 years like a lot of these automotive companies want you to. Right? And another reason is planned obsolescence, having all of these new products and services come out all the time. It stimulates a job market for designers and engineers. That's why Silicon Valley, where Google and Microsoft and all of them are, that's why it's so popular right now. Okay? But some people, especially lots of these businesses, trying to justify planned obsolescence, they're saying that it's actually the consumer's fault. It's our fault as buyers. Is that true? Are we the root of the problem? Because what the companies will say is that the consumers are the ones that are choosing to replace these functioning products, right? I'm the one that's choosing to replace my phone every year. I mean, I don't, but people do, right? People do replace their phones all the time, replace their cars even though they only have 50,000 kilometers on them. And there's studies done to test these different decisions, right? Product obsolescence, which we talked about, are involuntary decisions that the companies make, right? Death dating and things like that. But those technological obsolescence, right? Oh, this doesn't look good anymore. It doesn't look... These clothes I'm wearing aren't in anymore. I need to replace them. Those are voluntary decisions for us. But these studies say that voluntary decisions are occurring more frequently today. So we can talk about Apple slowing down their phones all we want, but when it comes to just the general population, most buyers are replacing their products prematurely of their own volition. Right? And buyers tend to see frequent upgrades as positive and valuable, right? Newer models, frequent upgrades. So really what I want to come down to here is, there we go, sorry. This is a shared responsibility. It's not just on the corporations and the businesses, but it's not just on consumers either. The corporations are doing part of it, consumers are doing part of it in our society. So dealing with planned obsolescence is a shared responsibility. And that's kind of what I want to talk about here is, now that we have all of this stuff, what are some responses? How can we try and combat this ethical issue? Well, the shared responsibility really rests on three main types of people. The designers who are designing these products, the managers or the executives of these companies, and consumers. So for the designers should place high value in ethical and sustainable design during their education, right? So when people are going to school to learn how to be designers and things like that, they should try and get those ethics done there. Just like why I'm teaching you ethics right now. Try and do something like timeless designs. Triumph motorcycles are great for that. They haven't changed their look since like the 40s or 50s. And their bikes still look great. It's a timeless design. They haven't had to spend a lot of time, effort, and resources in redesigning things like a lot of car manufacturers do. So things like classic looks, cultural looks that won't change over a long period of time, things that resonate with the community for the same reasons. designed to be adaptable, things that can be easily repairable. You can upgrade components, right? Like if you build your own PC as opposed to just buying a laptop, you can repair your PC, you can upgrade your PC for a lot, it can be more economical, right? I built my PC for less money than most MacBooks cost, and it outperforms most MacBooks, but I can still upgrade it even more if I want to, right? So design products for adaptability. Then we have the managers. And there's something called the triple bottom line in business. And essentially, in a nutshell, what that means is businesses shouldn't just care about profits. They should also care about people and the planet. Profits, people, and planet. Okay? Managers should compete via branding, positioning, and competitive advantage. We'll talk about those, but essentially, from the business side, don't try to compete with just having more products and more frequent products than the other people, but through branding, messaging, positioning. Make things available such as firmware, spare parts, and tutorials so that you make it easier for people to repair their products and keep them longer. And lastly, what can we as consumers do? Again, adopt those triple bottom line values where we also care about people, we care about the environment, and for profits, we're supporting businesses that are ethical. So if we can do that as consumers, that'll help. Do our research on our products, right? Is this product going to last me a long time? How easy is it to repair or replace these products? Or upgrade, I should say. And challenge assumptions regarding your purchase decisions as well, right? And of course, look for green or recyclable products and find anything that's upgradable and easily repairable.